Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. My older brother chased me through a field with a long stick in 1971 when I was in second grade. I raced up a water tower to avoid his attack. After a while, he tossed the stick over a barbed wire fence and motioned for me to come down. As I began to descend, I slipped and fell about 10 feet. I landed on my feet with my back to the water tower. "Come on, let's go," my brother said as he ran over to me. I stood there while staring at him, but he was standing behind me. I watched him reach out and shake my shoulder. His eyes were filled with fear. He was still behind me, and I was still facing the tower. He bent around my body over some piping and noticed something startling. Blood. I noticed his stunned expression and looked over his shoulder to see what he was seeing. He lifted up my shirt, and we were both surprised to see that I had landed on the pipe, which had become lodged in my left side just below my ribcage. Years later, my brother told me that I was non-responsive and that my eyes were fixed straight ahead the entire time. He attempted to yank me off. That's not good. He wrapped his arms around me, lifted me off the pipe, and seated me on another large pipe. He bolted to seek assistance. To get my mother, he had to run through a grassy field, down a creek bed, through a grassy field, and across a street. I got up and started walking. I looked up in the middle of the first grassy field and saw one puffy cloud, and for some strange reason said out loud, "Please God, don't let me die. Give me another chance." My mother was waiting in the station wagon when another of my older brothers appeared out of the creek bed, picked me up, and raced me to her. When I think back to that moment, I realized two things as an adult. For starters, I had an out-of-body experience. 2, I don't remember going to church or being religious as a family back then. My mother was a divorced alcoholic with 6 children, the youngest of whom was me. So why did I pray to an unknown God for another chance at such a young age? Fast forward to 1993. When I was 29, married with no children and attending church. I was sick and did not go to work this morning, which was unusual for me. My wife called me all day and came home early to find me in the same crunched position I was in the morning. She wanted me to go to the ER, but I wasn't going to help some doctor go on vacation by telling him I had the flu. But by the afternoon, I was all set. They checked for issues, and my inept emergency room doctor prescribed Pepto-Bismol and told me to drink it and go home. My wife and I became agitated. "I've had heartburn for many years, and this is no heartburn," I screamed at the nurse. They ordered more tests and gave me painkillers as I requested. It was becoming more intense as the evening progressed. They kept me overnight for observation, which I have no recollection of. The next morning, I awoke to tubes being pushed down my throat and the same inept doctor telling me to swallow the tube or it would be worse for me. As I swallowed the water and the tube, I thought I was drowning. My wife was by my side, crying and watching. The inept doctor then said, "Oh well, I expected to find an ulcer or something," then yanked the tube out of my throat. My wife started yelling at him that we could have spared everyone that little episode because there's no ulcer. This was different. He literally said, "I have a plane to catch," and then left. There were no other doctors available, so my wife sat by my side, watching me come and go. "Lord God, please don't let him die. He doesn't even have kids yet," she prayed. I apparently popped my head up off the pillow at that precise moment and said in an undrugged out voice, "Hey buddy, how you doing?" before falling back asleep. My stomach began to grow and my wife requested that a nurse examine the situation. She agreed and tried to find a doctor to come look at it. She eventually ran out of the emergency room and into the hallway where she encountered a doctor who just arrived at the hospital to make his rounds with his patients. I was awake when he approached me and inquired about my blood pressure. He directed the nurse to raise me and monitor my blood pressure, which dropped immediately. He started yelling code blue, and rushed me upstairs to the emergency operating room. My gurney became stuck between the elevator and the hallway until some people nearby helped lift it out. The surgeon was in the middle of closing up another patient when he heard the code blue. He rushed to get ready for my arrival. They informed me that they had no idea why I was bleeding internally and that I would need to sign a release form. I replied, "Anything to stop the pain," and signed the form. Then there was the mask. I was now floating through a pitch-black tunnel. I tried to see the sides, but they didn't appear to be there. I noticed that I was a golden transparent color when I looked at my hands by my side. I had golden transparent feet, toes, and fingers, the whole 9 yards. When I looked ahead, I noticed a distant light, a dot of light that was far away and blurry. I squinted to try to focus, but I found myself outside the tube in a vast, flat, black darkness. I looked for stars, but all I saw was a dark, rubbery tube stretching ahead of me forever, not even in a straight line. That perplexed me because looking into a hose requires stretching it out in order to see the light at the other end. Here's something difficult to explain. I was watching myself inside the tunnel at the same time I was looking at myself outside the tunnel, all seeing and all questions happening at the same time. How could I be down there, seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, when I'm floating out here seeing a tunnel that isn't in a straight line? I was hurled through the tunnel at breakneck speed toward the light. It was breathtaking. Years later, as I floated in a warm swimming pool, I was transported back to that moment. It was the splash of water on my face. That was how I felt in the tunnel. I was in the light as quickly as I had begun my journey through the vast length of the tunnel. As clouds, it swirled around me. Various shades of white swirling quickly. This is how I describe the sensation. Imagine the most wonderful feeling you've ever had and multiply that times millions. I remember saying, "Wow." It was so perfect that I didn't want to leave. I was suddenly in the dark, yelling, "No." I awoke to find my wife next to me. I was in the recovery room and I grabbed her arm and said, "I think I almost died." "You did," she said, sobbing. I was born with 2 fully functional spleens, it turns out. The previous morning's pain was caused by the auxiliary spleen twisting and pinching. It burst in the emergency room and my wife noticed my stomach expanding. The doctor who saved my life claimed that his experience in Vietnam had helped him. He'd seen plenty of guys my size in similar situations and recognized right away that I was bleeding internally. By the time they cut me open from my sternum to just below my belly button, I had lost 3/4 of my blood supply to my abdomen. They had recently purchased a machine that takes one's blood during surgery, cleans it, and reintroduces it into one's own body, thereby avoiding blood transfusions. However, the only person who knew how to operate it was on vacation. However, someone who teaches people how to use it happened to be in the building from Boise, Idaho, which is 50 miles away. So here I am, 44 years old, and this is how I live. Rather than crying, "Why is this happening to me?" I take the experience and hope to meet someone in my travels who I can assist. You see, if I didn't have any of my own experiences, how could I truly understand what someone else is going through? "You don't understand. You don't have kids," a lady once told me. True. Now that I have children, I understand what she was thinking back then. I'm still not sure why I asked God for another chance. I know I still make a lot of mistakes in life. I've asked many preachers and scientists to explain what happened, but no one knows. They justify it somehow. They cannot, however, take away my experience. I live with it every day, think about it every night, and crave it all the time. What is my mission on this planet? I haven't figured it out yet, but I now believe that we are some kind of energy being after all, with limbs, senses, sight, and understanding in that form. I now own a very successful restaurant and have been married for 17 years with 2 wonderful children, a ballerina and a future fighter pilot. I've been in numerous car accidents, breaking my arm, fractured my spine, and suffered multiple concussions, some of which I can't remember. I was recently diagnosed with hip arthritis, and I occasionally have dreams come true. I'm content, but I know life will go on after I'm gone. I'm looking forward to leaving, but I'm not going to rush. I stopped judging others and instead encourage people from all walks of life. Life is good because I was given more than a second chance.